Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Digital EDU Dialogues podcast. I'm Angela Britcher, and joining me again today is Dorothy Miraglia, the Vice President of Academics and Professor Services here with the BAB Group. And today we are going to talk about you've achieved the goal. You are teaching at multiple schools. You've got this, you're living your adjunct dream or your teaching online dream. And now you have to figure out how to manage and organize teaching at multiple schools at the same time. So we are going to share our best practices for this. And I want to start by saying, Dorothy, I'm so grateful to you because not only did you mentor me through getting to teaching at all of those schools and help with my CV and all of that, but you have also provided such great advice about staying organized now that I am living the goal.
I'm glad. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because I feel like you have to be organized to be successful to work from home. So I'm excited to jump into this with you.
Yes, and I think that is such a key part of it too, is that when we're teaching at multiple schools and we're teaching at home, how do we keep it all going and still make some time to for our family life and to have some balance. So let's start with some of your best practices just for managing the workload when you're teaching at multiple schools.
Okay, so I'm big on calendars, digital, handwritten to-do lists, but I want to go back to start with the calendars first. Mm-hmm. Last year, I discovered this calendar called Skylight, and it's a digital calendar. It's about the size of an iPad, and it hangs in my kitchen. I color code it for myself, my husband, my children. So everybody knows when they have an activity, when I have a meeting. So it's a great way to stay on track with your family and they know what you're doing so you're not interrupted. You can check it from your phone, update it on the app. I highly recommend this for working parents, for families. So everybody's on the same page, doctor's appointments, games to go to, anything that you have to do, you put it all on the calendar and it's easily accessible, meal planning. So I found it to be a really helpful investment when trying to balance work and all three of my children. And then just for myself in my office, I carry, handwritten planner. It's cool. Actually, I write everything down, have it out for the week. I know it's expected of me. Put everything in there. Keep your when did the discussions due? Because it could vary based on the school you're teaching for. I know I have some discussions due on Sundays, some are due on Wednesdays because the classes either start on a Monday morning or a Wednesday. So keep a planner in front of you to handwrite notes. I find it helpful that way. I don't always like to rely on digital. I like the handwritten version. So it's just like another way to keep track of just my stuff. Big fan of daily to-do lists. I found these notepads on Amazon. I make a list every morning. This is what I need to do. These are the priorities. Check it off. And then you move on. This is what has to be done tomorrow. So to me, it's all about writing things down, having it in front of you, knowing what you have to do. And I think Sunday night is a great night to start a habit. Sit down at your desk, take out your calendar. What do I have coming up this week? How do I have to budget my time, manage my time? So take 10, 15 minutes for yourself on Sunday, have a quiet time, see what's coming up for the week, make any lists, any notes, and that way you feel better prepared for Monday. You're not scrambling Monday morning. I always like to wake up knowing this is what my goal is to accomplish today.
Yeah, I like that idea of preparing so that you feel better. Mm-hmm. On Monday morning. And one of the things I do is actually I set an alarm for Friday morning. So that Friday morning, I check all of my announcements to make sure that everything's ready to roll. Or if I need to create announcements, something that needs to go out on Sunday at midnight, I check everything to make sure that anything that needs done for Sunday night is done. And that way I can kind of go into my weekend feeling free, like, all right, I can just give Saturday to family time and fun time and not be worrying about working or scrambling to get something done on Sunday. And I also use a written calendar. And one of the things that I found really helpful is I use like a big old-fashioned desk calendar. And because my schools start on different days of the week or they're in a different week, like right now I've got one school in week 3, one in week 7. So I actually write down the school and then this is day 1, this is day 2, this is day 3, right. Depending on how they, they work their calendar, and that way I have it right in front of me. And I do this when I'm doing my course prep. So that way, when I have to go in, depending on the school, I may have to go in and put in the due dates.
Yes.
For discussions and assignments. And that way I can just actually look at the calendar and follow along. And that's been a really helpful tool to me. I literally sit on the floor, put the calendar out, and sit at my laptop and plug in all those due dates. And it makes it go much faster knowing I can see the calendar in front of me. So for me, that I'm with you, that handwritten calendar, as well as alarms. Alarms are so helpful to me. On Sunday night, I will set alarms for the week, to remind me, Wednesday, podcast with Dorothy. What time do I need to be ready? So, when are there meetings this week? When is something due? When do I need to grade? When do I need to pop into that school's discussion? So those alarms are
brought up a good point about Fridays, making sure all your announcements are ready for Sunday. I used to sit there every Friday and prep my week that would begin on Monday. And I realized it was getting to be too much with multiple classes. So now when I'm given my courses to set up, I set up the whole class at once, and I have everything ready to be published on that date. So all I need to do is go back and review it. So after years of teaching, I said, you know what? This makes more sense for me. I make better use of my time, take a couple hours, set up my course for the 8-10 weeks, and be done with it. And that way I can focus more on grading, discussions on that Friday, and even getting ahead for Monday morning. If students turn in papers, I'll grade everything, save them in the drafts, and I'm already 2 steps ahead for Monday morning.
Yeah, I think that is great advice as well, that we don't have to wait until the day it's due to grade. If students are working ahead, of course, I applaud that. Sometimes I'll just shoot them a message, hey, is this ready for grading? In case they just submit it and then they're like, oh, they're thinking about it. But, I think we all have those students that every week, whether it's because of their work schedule or family schedule, they're going to submit assignments early. And so knowing they welcome that early feedback, and that way they can get a jump start on the next week, or if they're traveling or something. So getting grading done ahead of time just eases the load on that grading day.
It's helpful too, because just recently I had a student submit the wrong document. And he said, and I said, it's due in 2 days, but you still have time to resubmit. And he was so grateful. So it helps if, when those documents come in early, just check them, because many times they're not submitted in the correct format. Like all the schools I work for, they don't want pages documents. You can't open them. And that's been happening a lot in 2 of my schools. So it helps just to jump in, and then it's not like the student's scrambling to resubmit as the week's already in progress. You don't know what their schedule is. So you're giving them that extra leeway that they can even prepare and get ahead. Like, okay, I'm still good. I'm still submitted on early. They don't have to worry about anything. You just say, hey, just resubmit. Yeah.
I think it's so helpful to students as well as helpful to us. Talk a little bit, any other grading tips that you have for when we've got that volume to grade, and, if we're working in schools where everything's due Sunday night.
Right. So I'm a big advocate of getting everything done on Monday. So I make Monday morning my grading day. I do it in stages, because I remember as a student, I like the early feedback. Many of my schools, I have a week to grade, but I don't want to wait that long, because students need the feedback to do better on their next assignment. So I take Monday, and sometimes a quiet Sunday. I jump into my office if everybody's doing something, and I just get a head start. But I try to grade in batches. If I have 20 students, I do 5 papers at a time, take a break. But I like the bulk of it off my shoulders on Monday. That way, Tuesday, I can jump into the discussions. The previous week's all done, tied up, and then you get into the new material.
I welcome that idea of batching. I used to work all day Monday and then grade Monday night. And when you're working at multiple institutions, and so there's different assignments, I was just getting overwhelmed, and I was what I told you I called like grading cranky. Like you don't want to go to the grocery store hungry because you'll make bad choices. And I didn't want to grade cranky, right? I want to give my students the most effective feedback I can to help them. I don't want to give them feedback that's because I'm tired and I've been working all day and grading. So I've started to do that as well. Like, getting hitting grading early when I can, when students submit things early, but then starting very early Monday morning and getting a chunk of it done, and then doing some other things, and then coming back to it. And, I think you know when you need a break. And so making sure to take those breaks while grading, or take a break like, okay, I'm done with this institution, I'm going to move on to that one after I do some other work, or, take some kind of break. And that's been that batch grading that you have described to me before has been a really helpful tool for getting through Monday. And I would say at most places, they recommend that we provide students feedback within 24 to 48 hours. And so I like to give it to them as soon as possible, because you always have those students that want to get started on the next week. So the earlier we can give them that.
So feedback. That's why, and it also goes back to, I try to grade every day, even discussions. If they write the discussion early, it's graded, it's saved in the drafts. But if you do a little bit every day, your Monday morning won't feel so overwhelming.
Yes.
So I actually take Fridays to catch up, because Thursdays my discussions are due for a course. So Friday morning I go in, I do all my grading. And if they did their peer replies, I grade that too. Everything's in drafts. If not, Monday morning, I'm back in there posting grades and updating whatever work you've done. And a lot easier.
And then it's not like we tell our students, right? Don't wait and do this all on one day. Yes. Do a little bit over the course of the week.
Helps us too.
Yeah, it's really great advice, it turns out, for us as well as our students. But Dorothy, you talked a little bit about, staying organized when you work from home, and you talked about how great your calendar is that you use to kind of guide your whole family and keep you on track. What are some other suggestions you have for staying organized while you're working from home across institutions?
Well, have a quiet space, have your own office, make it your own. I like to work in the mornings. That way, especially in the summer, I have the afternoon with my kids. But I always recommend sitting down at your desk the same time every day. Have a routine. Okay, from 8 to 8:30, I'm going to work on this class. Whatever works for you. Batch grading, setting a timer. Let me stay in this class for an hour, that class for an hour. However you need to jump around, whatever works for you. But to me, it's all about routine and lists and having a quiet spot. You have all your stuff there, your calendar, notepads, and anything you need, coffee, just to sit there and be able to focus with no distractions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think when we have our own space too, for me, it's my space. So my family knows it's my space. I'm pointing at my door, right? They know the door is closed. I'm in here, I'm doing my thing. Yes. And that, it's not that they can't come and go, but I'm at work if I'm in this room.
And make it your own. Make it your own space. It's your office. Decorate it. Make it fun. You want to be in an environment that motivates you. Mm-hmm. That's not, stark and dark. Make sure you have light, and, you don't feel like you're dragging sitting in front of a computer, because you're not in a cubicle. You're in your home office. Right. So make it personal for yourself, because you'll be more enthusiastic to sit there and do your work.
Yeah. That is some fantastic advice as well. Just thinking about the ideas of what we surround ourselves with in our office. And I'm thinking too, it's our meeting space, right? So, if we're meeting with colleagues, if we're meeting with students, that we're showing them a little bit of who we are, but it's also a quiet, calming space that they're seeing around us, as opposed to maybe working off the kitchen and then they're seeing kitchen behind us.
Yes.
So, I teach speech and oral communication, and how many times I'm telling students, think about everything around you when you're communicating. So it certainly contributes to our overall professionalism. It puts us in a professional zone. I'm in my office, I'm being a professional grown up, and so I'm going to behave that way and create this space that way. So, all right. So one of the things I want to talk about is when we're getting overwhelmed, right? Again, we're living the dream. We're teaching at multiple institutions. It's so exciting and it's so overwhelming at the same time when you've got a couple schools and everyone's on a different week, and you have different types of assignments and different classes. And when we get overwhelmed and when we get stressed, you love to talk about these ideas of work-life balance and taking care of yourself. If you could share some of your best tips for that.
You definitely have to take time for yourself, or you're gonna suffer from burnout. You have to prioritize. This is my work hours. Shut the door, walk away, go out to lunch with a friend, your family, do an activity, have a hobby. But it's so important when you're from home, working from home, you have to separate the two. Emails can wait. You have 24 hours to respond to a student. Just because they wrote you, if it's not an emergency and it's a simple question, you don't have to answer it right away. That was something that I had to pull myself away from. I'm like, they can figure something out. I will get back to them. But sometimes there's no need to just run back up to your office to answer a question. You need the time for you and to regroup, because it's a lot to balance multiple schools, you're grading and teaching sometimes two completely different courses. And then you'll have students just constantly email you. So you have to learn to separate, put yourself first, find things that work for you. If it's working out, meditation, just going for a walk, calling an old friend, reading a book, sitting outside, reading a book, but doing something for you, to keep that separation. Because when we teach online, we're so lucky that we're able to do it. I know it took me a while to get my foot in the door. And now I'm so grateful that I teach for all these institutions, that you have to find that healthy balance. So, because you don't want the burnout. And if you have burnout, you're not going to be good at your job. And then you're going to stop enjoying it.
I am so grateful that you taught me to let go of answering emails at all times. When I first started, I was like, well, this is when they're working. They're working on their stuff at 9 p.m. So I have to be available and answer their questions when that's not my prime time. Right. And so that was, I think, some of the most helpful advice that you gave me when I got started. I was answering messages while at, student or at like my child's games and stuff, thinking, well, they're working on it now, so I have to help them now. And reminding myself, like, oh, it's Wednesday. This is fantastic that they are starting this assignment early, but they have till Sunday. So I can respond to them tomorrow morning when I get back to work instead of at 9 p.m. when they're not going to get my best answer.
Exactly. And another thing you can do, mute your phone. Like, I mute my phone at a certain time every night, like 9 o'clock. You know what? I'm watching the Olympics right now. I don't want to be bothered. I need my downtime for a couple hours, and just put your phone on do not disturb. Just turn the emails off. You can silence them. You can, you don't always have to hear the ding and grab your phone. Yeah. It's healthy to remove yourself. Yeah. To not be available. Yes. It's really, really important. And you brought up another great point about reading an actual book. I think that's so important too, when we're working online and we're working virtually and we're communicating this way all the time, to close the laptop, put down the phone, and, read an actual book, whether it's, a book that I'm reading for school, a textbook, or a book I'm reading, in my field, or some, old-fashioned cozy mystery, whatever it is. To disconnect from technology, I think is so helpful as well. It's good for our brains. It's good for our eyeballs. It's just like, to sit in a cozy position. Creative, a book, even if, if you're a creative person and you like to sew or whatever. I used to be more crafty than I am now, but just to have that outlet with something else to put your energy toward. Mm-hmm. And finally, I want to talk a little about this. I know this is something that's really helpful to me, is when I get overwhelmed, especially on a Monday, and I'm about to grade cranky, I have to remind myself why I'm doing this, right? Like, why I worked so hard to get that degree so that I could teach, why I came to you in the first place. I'm like, I want to teach. And to remind myself of all the goodness of it, when I'm overwhelmed, or I'm like, oh my gosh, this student didn't turn their assignment in again, or, something's going on in the technology in my classroom, to whatever the frustration, to remind myself, this is why I'm doing it. And that's a moment for me to connect with students, to really dig into their work and be like, oh, this is so cool. They learned something. And, to read their work or watch their videos, or it's an opportunity for me to send a student a message that says, hey, you're doing a great job. And I love to send those. We've just sent so many messages of, hey, checking in, you haven't turned anything in a couple of weeks. So I've really tried to make an effort to send the opposite message as well. Like, you're doing a great job. I really appreciated this assignment you wrote. Here's some ways you might want to use that in your job. So thinking about sending those positive messages and just connecting with students, and that, for me, ultimately, that's
why I do the work. So I think looking to make those connections for you, whatever those are, of to remind yourself why you're doing it, when you get that stress, when you're feeling burned out, like what really brings you joy about doing it.
Yeah. No, it goes a long way, because a lot of students, don't expect those good emails. They're so used to receiving, the good students are not used to receiving personal feedback like that in an email. I've had many students say to me, wow, I can't believe you took the time to do that. And but they stand out to me, they need to know that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Dorothy, any other advice that you have about how we juggle all of it?
Just enjoy it and remember why you're doing it, and find your balance and just be grateful. And it's not always going to be easy, but you will figure it out. And just stay organized one day at a time, and make the me time.
Great advice, Dorothy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Welcome.
Today's episode is brought to you by Professor Services. Looking for a job in teaching? Need to expand your network? Want to boost your income? Whatever it is, the expert team at Professor Services has you covered. From helping higher ed faculty find new jobs, to essential tools such as cover letters and CVs, to applying to jobs for you, Professor Services equips you to nail your job search. Don't stress over the job hunt. Maximize your potential and crush your next opportunity with support from our team of experienced administrators, mentors, and educators. Discover how the team at Professor Services can help. Visit professorservices.com today to get started and kickstart your career.